I'm 27 and my ex is 34. We were together once before, years ago. And if you had asked me back then whether I thought he was my forever person, I would have said yes without hesitating. He was the person I ran to after one of the worst periods of my life. The person who felt solid when everything else was chaos. The person I confused with safety because I was too hurt to tell the difference between comfort and love. His name is Nolan. When we first got together, I was 19 and he was 26. I know how that sounds now. At the time, it felt flattering. He seemed mature, steady, grounded. He didn't party. He didn't disappear for days. He had a house, a routine, a quiet voice. After the kind of men I had dealt with before, that looked like peace. We moved in together fast. Way too fast, if I'm being honest. I had gone through something traumatic and I couldn't bear being alone. Nolan offered stability, a place to sleep, meals, gentleness in certain moments. He washed my hair when I couldn't stop crying. He held me when I woke up shaking. And I built an entire future around those moments because I desperately needed them to mean more than they did. The truth is that even in the beginning, there were signs. Nolan was always present physically, but not emotionally. He worked, came home, and disappeared into his computer. Games, streams, forums. Whatever digital world asked less of him than a real human being. If I tried to talk while he had his headset on, I could feel his irritation before he even spoke. He never had to hit me or cheat on me to make me feel small. All he had to do was act like my needs were interruptions. At first, I excused it. He was tired. He was stressed. He was depressed. I said those things for him so often that eventually I stopped asking whether I was lonely and started asking whether I was understanding enough. Then there was his mother. She still lived in the downstairs part of the house he had taken over. Technically separate, not emotionally separate. She crossed boundaries like they were decorative. Comments about my clothes, my cooking, my sensitivity. If I got upset, she acted confused. If I pulled back, she said I was cold. And Nolan's favorite response was always the same. She doesn't mean it like that. That sentence did more damage to me than people realize. Because after a while, she doesn't mean it like that turns into, maybe I'm the problem. Maybe I'm too sensitive. Maybe I'm dramatic. Maybe I expect too much. We stayed together for nearly 7 years. We had a daughter, Mila. She's 4 now. And if I list out the worst moments, it becomes obvious how long I should have left. Once, when Mila was a baby, I was holding her in the living room and felt myself about to throw up. I called for Nolan. He looked up from his game and said, "What?" I barely got out. "I'm going to be sick." Before he put his headset back on, I threw up while still trying to protect our daughter from it. Then I had to clean it up myself. Later, when I cried and asked how he could possibly ignore that, he said, "You didn't actually tell me what you wanted me to do." Another time, I was pregnant and hormonal and exhausted and crying in the bedroom. He was gaming in the next room. I heard him yell, "Shut up," loud enough that even from the bed I froze. He apologized later, said he didn't mean it at me, said it was just the game. That was another pattern with him. Everything cruel became accidental once it was over. The worst was when I had a medical emergency. I have bowel issues that can get severe very quickly. One night, the pain escalated so fast I thought I might pass out. I was throwing up, sweating, screaming for him from the bathroom floor. He came in, looked annoyed, and said, "This is what you get for eating garbage." Then he went back to bed. I ended up in an ambulance. And somehow, even after that, I stayed. Because when you've been slowly trained to explain away neglect, there is always another excuse ready. Eventually, I left. Not all at once. Not dramatically. It was more like something inside me died by degrees. I stopped reaching for him. Stopped imagining us growing old together. Stopped believing the tenderness he showed me once in a while could outweigh the indifference that showed up every day. We broke up, and for the first time in years, I felt grief mixed with relief. Then came the dangerous part. Time. Time softens memory, especially when you are tired, especially when you have a child together, especially when the person who hurt you starts behaving better from a distance than they ever did up close. Nolan started therapy. He cut back on gaming. He became more attentive with Mila. He started speaking in language that sounded self-aware. He said he understood now how absent he had been. He said he took me for granted. He said losing me made him realize what he had done. And because I wanted so badly for our daughter to have a peaceful family, I let myself hope. A year after the breakup, we started spending more time together. At first, it was family outings, park trips, lunch after preschool pickup, then longer evenings, then private conversations, then him looking at me with that soft expression he used to wear at the beginning, before I knew what life with him actually felt like. He told me I was still the love of his life, that no one compared to me, that he never stopped thinking about us. And maybe this is the most embarrassing part. It worked. I wanted redemption. Not even romance, really. Redemption. I wanted the years I gave him to mean something. I wanted the damage to have a reward at the end of it. I wanted to believe suffering had been a long road to a better version of him, instead of simply suffering. So we got back together, and for the first 2 months, I genuinely thought maybe I had been too cynical. He was attentive. He texted me good morning. He planned dinner. He took photos of Mila and sent them to me with little captions. He even introduced me properly to colleagues and friends in ways he had never really done before. He acted proud of me. Visible. Present. I started wondering if maybe people really could change that much. Then one night, while we were out with mutual friends, one of his coworkers mentioned a woman named Sarah. Not in a dramatic way, just casually. A story about a concert, a trip, some restaurant Nolan used to go to all the time with Sarah. I felt something cold move through me, because Sarah was the woman he dated after our breakup. The woman he had told me didn't mean anything. I tried to let it go. I really did. But later I asked questions. Too many questions. The kind of questions you ask when you already know the answers are going to hurt, but hope maybe they won't. And that was how I found out he did things for her he never did for me. Trips, birthdays, weekends away. He posted her, introduced her to extended family, brought her into parts of his life I had spent years standing outside of. I cannot explain how humiliating that felt. Not because I wanted those exact things anymore, but because it confirmed a fear I had secretly carried for years. That I wasn't hard to love because I was broken. I was hard to love because he had never really chosen me in the same way. When I confronted him, he said Sarah had left because he couldn't stop comparing her to me, that I was the real love, that those gestures didn't mean what I think, that he was just trying to do things differently after the breakup. Maybe that was true, but truth didn't fix what it did to my mind. After that, I changed. I became watchful. I checked his tone, his phone, his stories. I hated the person I was turning into. If he smiled at a message, my chest tightened. If he went quiet, I assumed distance. If he mentioned going out with friends, I felt panic before he had even left the house. And because I felt ashamed of that panic, I expressed it badly. Too sharply. Too often. Which let him fall right back into an old role. The calm one with the unreasonable girlfriend. Then I found out he still had Sarah unblocked. That alone would have been enough to upset me. But it got worse. He went out one night, didn't tell me where, and I later learned she had been at the same club. He said they just talked. Like that was supposed to be reassuring. When I asked why he would even want to talk to her, he stared at me and said, "You've made her such a huge thing that I started missing what I had with her." I remember feeling my face go numb, because it was such a brutal reversal. He hurt me. I reacted. Then my reaction became the justification for a new hurt. I broke up with him that night. A real breakup. I packed a bag, took Mila, stayed with my cousin. I cried so hard I could barely swallow water. And then, exactly the way these stories always seem to go, he came back a week later. Flowers, apologies, long messages, promises. He said he panicked. He said he only said those things to wound me because he felt cornered. He said therapy had taught him that when he feels shame, he lashes out. He looked wrecked. And I made the mistake of confusing remorse with repair. So I took him back again. I know. That is the part that makes me angriest with myself. Not because loving him was stupid. Because each time I returned, I abandoned my own clarity. The final break happened 3 months later. Mila had a fever. I had been up most of the night with her. The next morning, I asked Nolan if he could pick up her prescription because I hadn't slept in almost 20 hours. He sighed. Not dramatically, just enough. Then he said, "You always make everything feel like a crisis." Something in me went still. Because that was it, wasn't it? That was the whole relationship in one sentence. My pain, my fear, my loneliness, my medical emergencies, my grief, my exhaustion, my pregnancy, my heartbreak. All of it to him had always been too much, too loud, too inconvenient, too real. And I suddenly understood why getting back together had felt so wrong in my body, even when I wanted it to work in my mind. I wasn't insecure because of Sarah. I wasn't unstable because of the past. I wasn't crazy with jealousy. I was reliving an environment that had already taught my nervous system it was never safe to need anything. I did not lose myself because I was weak. I lost myself because I went back to the place that had erased me the first time. I told him it was over. He argued. Then he cried. Then he got angry. Then he tried logic. He said people don't throw away years over one bad sentence. He said I was being reactive. He said Mila deserved both parents under one roof. He said I would regret giving up on our story. And for the first time, the word story sounded exactly as manipulative as it was. Because what he meant was history, obligation, nostalgia, a debt he thought I still owed him for the few times he had been gentle when I was young enough to mistake that for devotion. Update. It has been 6 months. We are not together. We co-parent. I keep things brief and practical. He still tries occasionally to sound reflective enough to reopen the door. I no longer mistake insight for change. His mother now tells people I am cold, that I gave up just when he was becoming a better man. Maybe that's true. But I am no longer interested in wading through another decade of collateral damage for a version of him that might finally be safe to love. The strange thing is that I don't miss him the way I thought I would. I miss the fantasy of a repaired past. I miss the idea that first love can come back wiser and finally become what it should have been. But I don't miss the reality, the vigilance, the shrinking, the way every need had to be defended like a courtroom argument. I used to think choosing myself would feel dramatic, victorious, clean. Mostly it feels quiet, like sleeping through the night, like not checking someone's tone for danger, like being able to hear my own thoughts again. And maybe that's the thing I wish someone had told me earlier. Peace does not always arrive like fireworks. Sometimes it arrives like silence after years of static. So if anyone else is considering going back to a person because history makes the bond feel sacred, here is what I wish I had asked first. Did they become safer? Or did time just make the pain look softer from far away? Because those are not the same thing. And loving someone once does not mean you owe them access to the version of you that survived them. This concludes today's story. Thank you for listening. If you enjoyed this story, consider subscribing to support our work.